Hey everybody, this is Zach from Cartridge Toyota. I'm working on a Toyota Sienna today. I'm going to show you how to do an oil change. So if you prefer not to come in to get your oil change, you could do a DIY home project and do an oil change at home yourself. So obviously you're not going to have a lift on the vehicle, but at home there's many options such as jack stands or ramps to lift the vehicle up so you can get underneath. So on this van, to fill it, we've got this oil cap. One good thing too, just so that you make sure that oil's getting in the vehicle, lift the dipstick up to make sure you know you're going to check the oil after you put oil in it and everything's good to go. And then with the hood open, it's also a good idea to check other fluids as well. Top off washer fluid, check your coolant, and so on, and what you can do as a DIY. Now one thing I want to stress too, of course I got my mask off right now so you can tell what I'm saying, but it's important to wear safety glasses and also wear gloves, PPE, so that's very important to stay safe while doing this oil change. You might not have a bucket like this to, of course, empty the oil into, but there's plenty of things you can use. Home Depot, Lowe's, they sell small little buckets you could definitely drain the oil into, or even AutoZone, O'Reilly's, that sort of thing. They'll be able to give you something to help drain that oil out, as well as with the oil filter being underneath here, empty the oil filter into that bucket so you don't make a mess on your garage floor. So with most Toyotas, you're going to be a 14 millimeter to loosen the drain plug. Pull the drain plug out, let the oil drain into the bucket. Now with these cartridge type oil filters, you've got this little cap on top of the oil filter housing. So instead of pulling this whole housing out and then making a mess, you can pull this cap off. And with a Toyota oil filter box, they give you this new clip you can insert. Pull that O-ring out, and then install this clip to drain the fluid from the filter. Now with this draining, one other thing to check while we have it up on the lift, or when you're at home, if you have the tools to do it, check your tire pressures. That's important. Now one thing to stress as well is with being a Toyota dealership, we want to stress that you use Toyota products such as the Toyota oil filter and the oil as well. And with the oil filter, with this type of oil filter, they're going to give you the filter cartridge, the O-rings, and then if you can, also replace the drain plug gasket so you don't have any leaks. Just to give you an example of what the other oil filter would look like, it'd be a hard case, and this is a full assembly. So instead of having this housing, you would just remove this filter and then install it where the old one came off at. And of course, this one already comes with an O-ring. Just make sure you pull the old O-ring off before installing a new filter so you don't double gasket and have leaks occur. Now with this too, you want to of course get all the oil out so we get all the contaminants from the engine out so we don't have future problems with this engine. Now the oil filter done draining oil, we can remove that. Now with this, there's special oil filter adapters to remove these type oil filters off your vehicles. You can certainly, same with buying ramps or jacks, you can go to your tool store or AutoZone, someplace like that, to buy an adapter to be able to remove this oil filter. As you can see, that's what the old oil filter looks like. It's definitely a lot darker than the new one. And you have the old O-ring here. Now, I definitely stress, and it's important, that this O-ring with the new one gets put on the exact same place on this filter housing. If you don't, and you put it somewhere on these threads, the oil filter then is going to leak and you're going to have problems. So with this, you've got this little oil O-ring here. Put that first on top of the oil filter housing. And then use some sort of a lubricant. You could use the old engine oil. I prefer something cleaner, such as a silicone spray. Lube up that new O-ring, and you've got that cover, screw this back on, and just snug it. And I already removed it, but I removed that old oil O-ring off of the oil filter. And now we're installing the new one. And like I said, make sure you put it in that larger area of the oil filter housing. Of course, install the new cartridge assembly. Same thing, lubricate that O-ring up before installing it. Make sure you get all the old oil out too of the mating surface so you don't cause leaks. Then start the threads by hand. Now with this, I won't need this adapter because if you look here, there's a square hole here, perfect for my ratchet with extension. Now, of course, this stuff doesn't need to be tight. If you definitely want to know what torque specs are, you can certainly ask a technician at the Toyota dealership, and we can certainly give you that information. Now, as you can see, the oil stopped draining here on the oil pan. Now, if you look here on the oil pan, the gasket stuck to the oil pan. So just like I talked about with the other oil filter, you don't want to put a new gasket on this old one because it's definitely going to leak and you're going to have problems. So another handy tool is a scraper, gasket scraper, to remove this old gasket for the drain plug. Wipe it down, make sure there's nothing hanging to where that would cause a leak. And install the new drain plug gasket and drain plug. Same thing, doesn't need to be super tight. And if you'd like to know the torque specs, you can certainly ask. Wipe everything down clean so that once we put oil in it and run the engine, we can check for leaks. So with this, just like changing your oil filter, it's important to use Toyota oil as well. I'm going to be using the gun, of course, but you can certainly buy our Toyota oil at the parts counter. We have all different sizes or weights. Just make sure, a lot of the caps will tell you the weight of what you need, but if it doesn't, definitely ask a Toyota parts counterman and they can certainly help you out and let you know what your vehicle takes for engine oil. A reminder, this gun is already pre-programmed with what the quantity of oil this engine is going to take. You might not know what your vehicle's oil quantity takes for the engine, and same thing with the type of oil. You can also ask the parts counterman for how much oil your engine's supposed to take as well. I'll then put the engine oil cap back on. Same thing as the other two, doesn't need to be super tight. Now I know I need to check the oil, of course, so we're going to start the engine up. Now it's important with this, all our vehicles, they have an oil light somewhere on here, or they might display a message showing oil pressure. Definitely when you start the engine up, make sure that light or that message disappears so that you know the vehicle's engine has oil pressure. Once you let it run a little bit, we can shut it off and we can check the dipstick for where the oil level's at. So with the dipstick fully inserted in the tube, you're going to pull it out and wipe it down the first time. Then you're going to insert it back into the tube and pull it out. And you can see it's a little bit lower, but with this thin oil, it might take a few minutes for the oil to drain back down in the oil pan to then pull up to this line. So don't think that right away you're low on oil. It might take a few minutes for the oil level to get back to full with the oil draining back into the oil pan. All our vehicles have a maintenance required message or a light to show you when your oil change is due. With this vehicle, it usually pops up a message into the display here. So to reset your maintenance required message or light on this vehicle, you can go into the settings, maintenance reset, then ask reset the maintenance reminder and click yes. And this is all using the steering pad on the right side here of the steering wheel. Now, like I said, other vehicles, if you have an older Toyota, might not have any of these buttons or even a display. It's going to show a maintenance required. So then you're going to use the odometer trip button here with either the engine start stop button or your key if you have one to then reset it as well. And it does the same thing as well. You can see it's resetting and counting down. Now once it hits zeros, you can let go of the odometer trip button and of course put it back where you'd like, showing what you'd want to see on the display. And then you can shut that key off or the engine start stop button off. And then of course, here is a lube sticker showing the next indicated mileage and the date that you want to replace your oil and oil filter the next time. If you would like one of these, we can certainly print one of these out for you and get it, or get a Toyota lube sticker for you as well from Toyota. And that's how to do an engine oil change. I want to stress again, definitely use Toyota products. They'll save you a trip in the long run. These products are made to guarantee that your vehicle's engine is going to last for a very long time. And hopefully you'll have that vehicle for a very long time in the future as well. Thanks. Have a great day.